how far would you travel for the perfect role? Now, first of all, we need to kind of establish what is the perfect role. And for you, the perfect role might be remote working. It might be sat at home, traveling around the world, wherever you want to travel, and working from your laptop. And I kind of get that, but I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the people who are right at the start of their career, fresh out of university, or 2 to 5 years, or 6 to 10 years, sort of mid-career. I'm talking to you guys. Now, the number one fact, this is stats and it's facts. The number one determining factor of how much you earn in your career, wherever you are in the world, but especially works in the developed world, especially in the UK and the US, number one factor is location. So if you're a developer, or if you're a programmer and you're working on something very, very high tech, it makes sense for you to be in the right place. It makes sense for you to be in Silicon Valley, not in Snowdonia. As great as it is to run and cycle in Snowdonia, it's not great for you to be there. It's not great for your career to be there. You probably will be able to find a remote role somewhere. If you're good enough, you've got enough experience, you probably will be able to find a role. Don't let that trick you, because it's going to stifle your growth. How far would you actually travel for the right role? Now, I can only give you my answer from experience and from speaking to many candidates across, from junior candidates, from fresh graduates, all the way through to very senior people looking to finish their last 5-10 years before they retire. I can give you these answers based on what I've seen, based on what your value is to a company if you are willing to get there. Now, here's what I did, because it just made sense. It just made total sense. And this was back in 2005, and I was kind of brand new to an industry, brand new to a company. For me, I can have a level of self-awareness that I know that maybe I'm not the best. Exactly the same in running. Maybe I'm not the best, but you're not going to outwork me. No way in this world are you going to outwork me. I'll do more than you. The figures will be more. If I'm not the best runner, sprinter, 1500 meter runner, interval runner, hill runner, downhill runner, whatever it is, I'm going to work on those weaknesses and develop also my strength and get better over time, because I understand the importance of consistency and those daily reps in terms of how they compound over the medium and longer term. Exactly the same in career. And so what I learned really early on was the closer I can move my apartment to work, the more time I have in work, but also the more free time I have. So I literally bought an apartment that was 30 seconds walk from my office. Now that might sound crazy to some people, because they're like, oh, I like my work there and I like my kind of home here and I like to separate them. For me, it was completely separate, and that's 100% psychological, how you view your work. Once I checked out, I was in my 20s, and it was easy for me to detach what I was actually doing and go out and have fun. And go out and do my sport and whatever else I was doing. It was easy for me to kind of separate the two, no matter how close I worked. But it was also very easy for me to get in early. So I was always first in the office, and I made it that way so that once it came to 5 o'clock, 5:30, when we finished, I could go to the gym and have an hour in the gym, and then come back at 6:30 after a shower and do another 3 hours. And that 3 hours would be as efficient as a lot of the afternoon or a lot of the day, because there was no distractions in the office, there was nobody there. And so what that made for me was, I had no commute, so the people that were commuting in from other places, and they were commuting an hour each way, already had 10 hours a week on them, because my commute was only a minute there and back. So I had that advantage. It was also so much easier. There was no deterrent for me to get in on a weekend. So to be there on a Saturday or Sunday, I just would go to the gym and then go into work. It just made total sense for me, and get some work done. And again, when you don't have distractions, an open plan office is the most distracting place you can possibly work on, unless you're laser light focused. And so you have to have that. But for me, being there and being very, very close made it so that I was able to go in at the weekend when nobody else was there. There was no distractions, and so I got a lot done. So you can have that as well. If you kind of commit to that level, I would always say that you should move to where the work is. 100% you should move to where the work is. And that might mean moving within your province, within your county, within your state, or it might mean moving countries. For me right now, the best place to be, I have to be there as close as possible. It's super important. Location is absolutely everything. So if you're in a position right now where maybe you're struggling for work, I'm speaking to a lot of people that are struggling to find jobs. And they're struggling to find jobs not because that there are no jobs out there, but because of their lack of commitment to actually properly applying to jobs, to following up those jobs, and actually relocating. If If you've just bought a house in a certain area, it's your dream house, and you kind of live there with your family, you've just had children, I completely get that. You've got some restrictions on you. But I'm talking to the people that are in the stage of their career where they want to do as well as possible, they want to work as hard as possible, as smart as possible, and grow as much as possible in that role and in their career, so that in the next sort of 3 to 5 years, they're looking back as a much more developed person, a much more improved version of their current self. That's what you should be thinking. Where am I going to be in the next 3 to 5 years? It's so important. And for me, having that sort of 30 seconds commute meant that I was ahead of the people. So even if they were 20%, 30% better than me, they couldn't outwork me. It was impossible. And I was working crazy hours at the time because I just wanted to hit that. We had a car target, a company car target for a sports car. And I was early 20s. I just wanted to hit that car target. And so I would do absolutely anything I could to work as hard as I possibly could to hit that target, to go on all the holidays and the lunch clubs that came with it. And I guess at the time in my early 20s, status was important for me, because as I looked out into the world as a young 20-year-old man, it was important what I was driving. It was important what watch I had, what shoes I was wearing, what suits I was wearing, where I was going to dinner, where I was going for drinks. Those things were important. You kind of get into your 30s and 40s and realize, actually, those things don't matter. But money still counts. And money still counts in terms of its freedom and its options. So if you're kind of trying to earn as much as you possibly can and value yourself and value your career and what you're kind of laying out in the world, location is the number one factor that's going to decide that. So that means the location to your job and where you're willing to and how you're willing to relocate means that that's going to give you freedom and it's going to give you options. It was easy for me to leave the office and go to the gym because everything was in like literally a quarter mile radius from where I lived. Everything was walkable. Everything, and that made getting out of the city really easy because everybody's going the other way. Everybody's going into the city to do interesting things. And they think that saving kind of $100,000 on a house by living sort of 10 miles from the city, that's a wise investment. But in actual fact, they're actually spending all their time in a car. It doesn't make sense to me. It never did make sense. I can understand if you kind of like, you have a family and they're outside the city and you want the family life or you want the balance, but you've got to ask yourself, what is balance? And what is balance to you? Because I don't think there is such a thing of absolutely nailing the balance. I think you're going to be hard on something in your life at certain times. You're always going to look after your relationships and friendships, but there's got to be a time in your late 20s and 30s where you say, do you know what, everything that matters right now is me doing as well as possible in my career. That's going to fulfill me, it's going to satisfy me, it's going to make me feel worthy, and that's going to make me happy, so I'm happy for the rest of my life. Become a better friend, I'm more focused, I'm better in my hobbies because they can take a priority. You should always prioritize your sport first thing in the morning so that nothing gets in the way of that. It's super important. I'm literally melting making this video. But number one factor of your salary is location. So how far would you move for the right job, for the perfect job for you? What I would say is you should be looking for a job anywhere in the world. If you're 20s, 30s, you should be looking for a job anywhere in the world if you've got this flexibility to get up and just go to where the perfect role for you is and go and sit in the perfect role. And once you've been there 3 to 5 years, the world is your oyster, because then you can go, then you first of all, you've been in a great role, you've learned, you've developed, you've grown in that role, and you're so much further forward in the next 5 years, but you also know that you can pick up and go to the next location. Why do you think oil workers make so much money versus a typical person who's got exactly the same CV, exactly the same education exactly the same education, but they've chosen to work in a different industry? If you've chosen to work in automotive industry, and that's in the UK, your salary is not going to be that of an oil worker. It's not going to be that of a renewable engineer worker. The world needs what it needs in that moment. And so if you've not had the foresight to see that maybe oil and gas is going to be busy forever, no matter what the media outlets tell us, and no matter what the big companies tell us about scarcity of oil, it's always going to be there. Like for our lifetime, it's always going to be there. There's no scarcity of oil. And so the reason that those people earn a lot more is because they're willing to go anywhere in the world for their next job. Whether they're a geologist and looking for oil, or whether they're working on an oil rig and they're a roughneck. Why do you think roughnecks with zero experience, just an offshore safety certificate, are earning £500 a day? It's absolutely, and they work 28 days on and 28 days off. And because they're willing to do that, and it sounds great, but it's absolutely not, because they're willing to do that, they earn a lot of money. And they can save a lot of money, but they usually don't in the 20s and 30s. They usually like to spend it as well. So you've got to be smart with your location, and you've got to be smart with the way that you deal with your finances so that you can be so much far ahead. And we're not just talking like double or treble. We're talking 10 times the person that you want to be if you make the right choices now and are willing to make the sacrifices in terms of picking up right now and going to get your perfect job, wherever the location may be.